Welcome to Fly Little Birds. This is a channel all about parenting, but more specifically adoption, fostering, childhood trauma. And today we're going to talk about childhood trauma and kind of what that can look like, how those behaviours might be displayed through the child in everyday circumstances. So the first thing to say about childhood trauma is it can strike at any time. The triggers can strike at any time, can be quite unexpected, and obviously it's going to be from things that have happened in the past, either from one massive event or a continuing run of events for the child. And when you're fostering or adopting, there's high chances that the child is going to come with childhood trauma. So first of all, it can look like anger and rage. Okay, so that's one big one I would say. It can look like anger and rage. And that anger and rage can be taken out on people that they love and people that they don't like, and they can just be generally angry with the world. And it won't take much then for them to go off into anger, and they can go from 0 to 100 really quickly, and nobody knows how to deal with it. And the anger can be, and the rage can be, not like your normal angry outburst, like a real rage, and really escalating really quickly, really dramatic, and actually really difficult to control. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say it can look like is the child or young person just shuts down and cannot speak to you about, even if they want to, they cannot process what they want to say to you. The emotion overcomes them, the fear overcomes them, and they just shut down and they just can't communicate with you. And even if you reach out to them, whilst they're going through the motions of experiencing a trigger because of the childhood trauma, they can't access enough words to say to you because it's like their body just shuts down. And this can kind of go a little bit further as well. I've mentioned on my channel before about dissociation. It can go a little bit further than that, where the child kind of shuts down for longer periods of time and becomes quite vacant and spaced out. It's almost like they're protecting their emotions and their innermost feelings by blocking out everything, but not temporarily, but more permanently. And that's obviously a little bit more things to worry about. The way to work with children that have childhood trauma is a huge amount of patience, because you're going to have to be there for them, whether they're in rages, whether they shut down. And sometimes I find that really words don't make any difference to them because they're in the moment. And the only thing that I find can work sometimes is a little touch to the hands, eye contact, voice, to try to bring them back to the here and now. Because what you want to do is you want to break the cycle for them of whether it's going to be the anger and the rage or whether it's going to be the shutting down. You need to try and break that cycle. And sometimes it's no good talking about what they think is affecting them, because sometimes they don't know, and the trigger might not actually be the thing that really affected them. It could have been something way different from that. So I'll give you an example. It might be that they're triggered by a friend or relative saying something to them, and they deem it to be unkind or something like that, but actually it's going back much more into earlier childhood experiences when something much more major happened to them, and that trigger is triggering that. So they can't always tell you what it is. And I think really the best way to work with them is to talk in scenarios when they're not in that moment. So you can touch them, you can give them eye contact, and you can use your voice to try and bring them back to you when they're going into one, but you can't necessarily talk about what the triggers or the childhood trauma might be whilst they're in that place. They need to be a lot calmer. So maybe an hour or two later, when things have settled down and everything's okay, if they're not too exhausted, because sometimes childhood trauma and the reaction to that can make them really exhausted, then you can sit down and start talking to them about things. Now, I've said about you can use toys to do this if you're talking about a younger child, but if you're talking about a young person, you can talk about scenarios. So you don't necessarily say to them, I think this happened to you because this might have happened to you when you were younger. I think I would talk in scenarios of, someone that reacted in this way when this had happened to them, or perhaps you reacted, perhaps if you've gone something, you reacted in this way. So don't make it too personal when you first want to start talking to them. Try to talk in scenarios or use books or visuals or whatever you need to do to give them a comparison so they can think about what that emotion actually is and what it relates to, and then they can start unpicking why it is they're reacting in that way. That's a good way to start. Any young person or child who feels threatened by you digging too deep, too quickly into what it is that's troubling them will just back away, and it will end up being their peers, or they will bury it deep and they won't share it with you, and then you never really move forward. And it takes a village to raise a child. So it takes a lot of work from school, yourself, relatives, friends, to actually cocoon these children around, to allow them to begin to unpick and unravel what's happened to them and to begin to share. And it is really important that you do allow them just to process the whole childhood trauma thing. And actually that is going to mean angry outbursts or shutdowns, real emotions that you don't know where they're coming from. So you're going to have to be patient and be there for them and build that attachment with them. And I hope that helps you. And if it does, please subscribe to Fly Little Birds, and I'll see you on my channel. Thank you.